That's right, folks. It's that week where we're starting to look for the perfect venue. And oftentimes we think that starting for the venue is one of the first things that we need to do, but if you know us by now, we had to pause, take a step back, lay some groundwork, and build a foundation. But heck, now that we've made it to this week, congratulations, and let's start having fun by looking for that perfect spot for you. It's Lexi Snyder with Inventive Events, and it's Wedding Wednesday, that hump day of the week where we're keeping your wedding plans on track. So last week you began working on your vision details, and you really should have by now your budget, your guest list, your vision solidified, and your wedding planner figured out. Really. So to be realistic, the venue hunt is going to take you maybe a little bit longer than a week, and it's going to depend on things like scheduling the tours with the venues or going through the quoting process with your selected locations. With that being said, it's important to give yourself enough time to find and evaluate all your venue options, as this is really a critical part of the process that lays the foundation to your event and your vendors. So with the guidance of things like your vision, your budget, your guest count, and your wedding planner, you are finally ready. And here are some great tips to remember when going on that venue hunt. So in no particular order, let's start off with every venue is going to have some level of policies, requirements, and insurance needs. Gather these first from each venue that you're interested in, and then bounce them back up against with your vision and your budget. So for example, if you plan to have a sparkler grand exit for your final time of your event, you need to make sure that the venue that you're interested in allows for sparklers. So again, it's important to ask your venue not just for their pricing and their packages, but also to find out those policies, those requirements, and any insurance needs. Tip number 2 is a little bit more obvious, but still necessary for us to mention and necessary for every client to do, but to go take a tour of the venues that you're interested in. The important thing here is to remember to not just turn on your touring cap whenever you enter into the facility, but to actually put it on from the time that you enter in your car from your location. The goal here is to be mindful of the logistics that your guests will be enduring for getting to the venue for your special day. Some things to consider just by even heading over to your venue would be things like, was it easy to find and to park? How are the travels like in the case of unfavorable weather? Or one of my favorite ones is, does the GPS easily pick up the venue address so that way guests can easily get there on the day of? One of the things that I think about whenever I give this type of advice would be one time we had a bride that we were meeting with her for her final coordination weeks. We didn't help her plan, but we were there for coordination. And her venue was about an hour and a half from her home and an hour and a half from where we would meet in the final weeks. And so I asked her, I said, why is your venue so far out, if you don't mind me asking? And she said actually she lives in Houston, but one time she was visiting her sister and they decided, hey, it's a beautiful day, let's go searching for venues. They went about 30 minutes down the road. It was beautiful. The place that she found, she fell in love with, and she said she just booked it right then and there. And she didn't really think about the prep logistics that it would take, how about finding a ceremony, because she wanted to get married in a church. She was now much farther than any church that she was associated with. She had to find someone to adapt for her wedding ceremony. And so it was just something that probably should have thought about, like not just whenever you get there, but turning on that touring cap right whenever you get into your car heading towards your venue locations. So some more tips to consider when looking for a venue would be things like considering rain calls and backup plans and the ease of vendor sourcing in that venue's local area. Some of these details are easy to scratch off the list. So for example, if you're having an indoor ceremony instead of an outdoor ceremony, then maybe a rain call plan is not necessarily applicable to you. But if that's the case, you definitely just want to know these kind of things up front and go through them and review them with your venue and your fiance and your family if involved, and just be able to make sure that you're crossing those off the list for consideration, because you're going to want to know those now. They tend to be the biggest headaches and the priciest price tags if they're not figured out sooner rather than later. So number 4 is going to be one of the ones on the list that you most commonly see other like bridal magazines and wedding planners say this is so important when looking for a venue. And we're actually going to chime on here and say that we do agree. And this one is about asking your venue options as to what flexibility you have when it comes to assembling the rest of your vendor team. So for example, if they have a preferred vendor list or maybe a required vendor list for certain categories, maybe like bar or catering, or if you're able to tap into the general market and go and source for your own vendors. This is very critical into the planning part to know what your parameters are for vendor team assembly, I guess you could say, because it's going to lay the rest of your foundation in how you go out and hire on with your remaining vendors. So one of our next tips of advice is going to be to draft a layout. And this one's kind of weird because 2 years ago we didn't really suggest this at the preliminary stages of just looking at your venue options. But it seems to be that these days, whenever you're not considering these kind of things up front, we're starting to see a lot of bombshells come on towards the end. So whether it's figuring out that you wanted square and not round tables, or maybe figuring out that you want a majority of the tables placed on the second floor and not the first floor. And so figuring out that those things aren't able to align with your vision or they're against policy is one of the last things you want to figure out when it comes to finalizing the layout in the final weeks. So again, it's weird, but now we're starting to say maybe start considering a preliminary layout when just looking at your venue options in the first place. Last but not least, it's going to be to get that backbone for that timeline figured out. Nothing drastic needs to be figured out now, but at least know your prep time locations, things like your ceremony, its estimated start time, maybe a cocktail hour or time period, and then how long you typically want your reception to last. You can usually figure out the little tiny details that go in between later on down the road, but this will give you a good general timeline to know how long you're going to need your venue rental for. Well, that's about it, guys, and thanks so much for joining us this week. We hope you found this video useful, and of course, if you find yourself still in need of some additional custom support and needing help to weed through some specifics to your special day, don't forget to contact us here at www.inventiveeventshouston.com. So next week, you're likely going to have a better idea of the backdrop and the location for your special day. So it just might be that perfect week to start considering your gown. From our company to you, enjoy your engagement process and be inspired by your wedding plans. And above all, happy planning. To record. Figure it out better now than later. Ooh, it's been a day.